After finding out my husband was in love with the fake heiress, I decisively asked him for a divorce. He merely nodded, his face expressionless as he handed me a glass of water. I drank it without the slightest suspicion, and my head quickly grew hazy and heavy. When I opened my eyes again, there was a chain locked around my wrist. At the family banquet, I got into an argument with the fake heiress, Shiva Brown. She lay weakly in my mother's arms, looking pitiful. Crying, she said she wouldn't come back to visit my parents anymore. Her husband, Paul Curry, shielded her with a cold, overbearing expression. "If the Brown family doesn't welcome Shiva," he said, "then our Curry family will take care of her." My parents looked at me with nothing but disappointment in their eyes. "Sharon, I know you're angry," my mother said, "but Shiva is innocent after all." Everyone took her side and pointed their fingers at me. Even my husband, James Curry, had an emotion in his eyes I couldn't read. But I didn't feel I was in the wrong at all. If Shiva's mother hadn't harbored evil intentions and secretly switched me and Shiva at birth, I wouldn't have grown up wearing only discarded clothes nobody else wanted. I wouldn't have had to wash clothes, cook meals, and take care of my younger siblings. I wouldn't have lived a life where I was never full and never warm. I finally got into high school, only to have Shiva's parents bar me from going. It was only after the school stepped in, waiving my tuition and giving Shiva's parents a sum of money, that they barely agreed to let me attend. I relied on work-study programs and my own hard labor to struggle through high school. On the eve of the college entrance exam, Shiva's parents stole my ID card and locked me in the house, saying they wanted to sell me to a 40-year-old, lame bachelor in the next village in exchange for a bride price. After the exam was over, I was finally acknowledged and taken back by the Brown family. But Shiva had already enjoyed everything that should have been mine. How could she, after learning the whole truth, still stay so righteously and comfortably in my place, and even marry the fiancé who was originally meant for me? None of this was fair to me at all. Until today, at the family banquet, when I saw the live comments floating across the screen, the villainess really is wicked to the core. Relying on her status as the real heiress, she not only picks fights with the heroine every day, she even wants to steal the heroine's husband. No wonder her parents end up hating her, and the second male lead locks her in the basement and imprisons her until she dies. I really feel sorry for the second male lead. Just to bring his brother and the heroine together, he marries such a walking disaster. Exactly. Why can't the heroine just have both brothers? I'm obsessed with this caught-in-the-middle setup. My poor second male lead can only watch the main couple live happily ever after while he hides in a corner and cries. Only then did I understand why, every time I saw Shiva, I couldn't suppress the resentment that surged up inside me, why I seemed to lose my mind and lash out at her like a lunatic. It turned out the very will of this world was pushing me toward that fate. Along the way, from the comments, I found out that the world I lived in came from a Real and Fake Heiress novel. I was the vicious supporting character, the real heiress who did every bad thing imaginable and ended up with a miserable ending. Shiva was the beloved heroine whom everyone in this world adored, including my husband, James. He was Paul's younger brother, the male lead's brother and the devoted second male lead. He loved the heroine, but had no choice except to give her up so she could be with his brother. After we returned from the Brown family home, James and I went back to our own separate rooms. When we had just gotten married, we actually got along peacefully for a while. Later on, I didn't even know when things became like this. According to the comments, I wanted to steal Shiva's husband, so out of spite I married James. But that wasn't true. I married James because I liked him. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't even have been able to sit for the college entrance exam that year. Now that I knew the person he liked was also Shiva, a sour, swelling ache rose in my chest. After a quick shower, I collapsed onto the bed in exhaustion. With my eyes closed, I replayed the 20-odd years of my life. Suddenly, I just felt utterly powerless. My biological parents didn't love me, their unconditional favoritism was reserved for Shiva. Perhaps, in their hearts, it was even harder to accept that I was their real daughter. At every family gathering, the dishes were always prepared according to Shiva's tastes. And the man I loved Shiva as well. In that final second before falling asleep, I quietly made a decision in my heart. The next morning when I woke up, James had already gone to work. The Curry family favored his older brother, Paul, who was 3 years his senior. The family company would also be inherited by his brother. While he was still in his junior year of college, Paul started his own business and founded a tech company. He was young, successful, and already accomplished. I quietly enjoyed my brief, peaceful breakfast. Then I took out my phone and sent separate messages to my parents, "Give me 10 million, and I promise I'll never target Shiva again." This was what they owed me. Shiva had spent more than 20 years in the Brown family, living my life. She had married Paul right after graduating, without ever suffering the slightest hardship. We had married on the same day. Shiva's dowry consisted of all kinds of jewelry and treasures my mother had been preparing for her since she was a child, plus cars, houses, and shops, everything you could imagine. All I got was 2 million and an apartment. To ordinary people, that might sound like a lot. But it wasn't even a tenth of Shiva's. My parents agreed very readily, perhaps because they still felt a trace of guilt. "We'll agree," they said. "As long as you never make things difficult for Shiva again." Together, their transfers came to 20 million. Adding that to the savings I had scraped together over the years, it was more than enough for me. I immediately contacted a lawyer to draft the divorce papers. I didn't want to be this vicious supporting character anymore. Nor did I want to stay entangled with James. I just wanted to get away from this vortex of right and wrong and live a peaceful, quiet little life of my own. James came home that afternoon. The moment he walked through the door, I sprang up from the sofa. "James." His dark eyes drifted over to me, deep and cool. My heart still couldn't help skipping a beat. Honestly, he was even better looking than his brother. His double eyelids folded in a deep crease, his lashes were thick and long, his nose high and straight, and his lips full. There was absolutely nothing you could fault. I took a deep breath and mustered up my courage. "We need to talk." He strolled over with an air of nonchalance and set down his briefcase. I handed him the divorce agreement I was holding. He lowered his eyes, his long lashes trembled slightly, and I seemed to catch a flicker of surprise in them before his brows knit together. "You want a divorce?" I nodded solemnly. "A marriage without love is a mistake. I'm sorry. I never should have pushed you into agreeing to marry me in the first place." James lifted his head, a shadowy emotion spreading in the depths of his pupils. His voice turned a little cold. "You regret it now?" I faltered for a moment, then nodded. "I regret it." It wasn't really regret, strictly speaking. I had once thought about living a good life with him. But now I knew that was impossible. If I stayed, the only thing waiting for me was a tragic end. One person's strength was far too insignificant. I could never win against the heroine, the male lead, my parents, or him. At that moment, the live comments suddenly became lively. "What the heck, I don't really get what the villainess is doing today. Has she turned over a new leaf or something?" "Yeah, I don't get today's plot either. The villainess actually took the initiative to ask the second male lead for a divorce. How is the story supposed to develop after this? How is a divorced woman supposed to compete with the heroine? She's probably brewing some nasty scheme. Didn't she ask her parents for 20 million this morning? She's definitely planning something shady she doesn't want anyone to see." I merely smiled to myself. James watched me in silence for a long time. Suddenly he said, "I'm a little thirsty. I'll get myself a glass of water and then we'll talk." With that, he turned and walked into the kitchen. I sat on the sofa, scrolling on my phone for a while. Before long, James came back out and held a glass tumbler out to me. "Have some water." "Thank you." I reached out and took it. James sat down opposite me, unhurried, setting his own glass on the coffee table. Then he picked up the divorce agreement in front of me and began to leaf through it. I seized the moment and spoke. "As for the division of property, I won't take a single cent from you." James said nothing, his expression intent and focused. Without even thinking about it, I lifted the glass and took a sip of water. Time seemed to stretch on, until I had drained the last drop in the glass. James still hadn't finished reading. I was starting to feel restless, so I stood up and said, "Take your time. I'm going to get myself another glass of water." I had just walked into the kitchen and set the glass down, when my vision began to blur and my head grew heavy and foggy. In the instant before I collapsed, I felt a rush of hot breath behind me, and someone caught me as I fell. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying on a large, soft, luxurious bed. A silver chain had appeared around my wrist. When I tugged it lightly, it gave off a crisp metallic clink. The live comments on the screen were just as confused as I was. I looked away for one moment and the plot turned into this? Why did the second male lead lock up the villainess ahead of schedule? Nice, the second male lead imprisoning the villainess, he's definitely doing it to vent the heroine's anger. If I remember right, in the original, the imprisonment part was brutal. How did it go again? You could sometimes hear broken sobs drifting up from the basement. A powerful wave of unease rose up inside me. According to the comments, the plot had jumped ahead. I was being imprisoned by James, and my end would be miserable. But I was still young. I hadn't lived enough yet. I lifted my head, studying my surroundings, bewildered. This didn't look like the kind of place you'd use to torture someone. Before I could think too much, I suddenly heard the click of a lock turning at the door. I turned my head on reflex. James walked in carrying a tray. "You're awake." Forcing down the panic in my chest, I asked, "What are you going to do?" James didn't answer. He walked to the bed and set the tray down on the table. "You must be hungry. Eat something." My gaze froze on the steaming bowl of beef noodles on the tray. I couldn't help remembering that winter break in my second year of high school, after I finished a part-time shift. My adoptive parents blocked me at the school gate and demanded money. When I refused, they tried to snatch it from me by force. At the height of my despair, James appeared out of nowhere on his bicycle and drove them off. He knew I hadn't had dinner, so he pedaled me to a small shop and bought me a bowl of beef noodles. It was absolutely the best bowl of beef noodles I had ever eaten. Now, James picked up a chopstick full of noodles, blew on them gently, and held them up to my lips. The live comments surged in front of my eyes. What is the second male lead trying to do? Weren't we promised imprisonment and torture? Why is he feeding the villainous noodles? Probably her last meal. Stuff her before she goes to meet her maker. I turned my head away, refusing the food, my brows knitting tight. What exactly are you trying to do? You've been asleep for a whole day and night, James said. Aren't you hungry? I tugged at the chain on my wrist. Let me go. Now. Illegally restricting someone's freedom is a crime. James stayed silent. We stared each other down, saying nothing, locked in a battle of wills. After a long time, he quietly set the noodles down and got up to leave. Once James was gone, I tried every method I could think of, but I still couldn't get free or get out of the room. In the end, I only managed to exhaust myself. My stomach rumbled loudly. I looked over at the bowl of noodles on the table. In the end, I really couldn't hold back. I picked it up and started eating. Better die full than die starving. The very next second, the door swung open. James came in pushing an elegant serving cart loaded with food. There was charcoal grilled steak, pan-seared foie gras, spaghetti with meat sauce, creamy vegetable soup, a fruit platter, tiramisu. My eyes immediately lit up. The cart rolled to a stop in front of me. James took the bowl out of my hands. Cold food is bad for your stomach. Eat this instead. He held his hand out in front of my mouth. I looked up at him, confused. James's face was unreadable. Spit. Heat flooded my cheeks and I suddenly felt mortified. Did he want me to spit the noodles into his hand? That was kind of disgusting. I really didn't think I could do it. I kept chewing and tried to swallow. James's long fingers suddenly clamped around my jaw, forcing my mouth open. I hadn't expected him to do that. Startled, I hastily spat the noodles into his palm. James didn't show a hint of disgust. The tips of my ears burned as I stared, stunned, at his retreating back. The live comments exploded. Holy crap, what kind of plot is this? Is this even okay? Is the second male lead actually going to torture the villainess? Honestly, he just now looked kind of spicy, like he was about to start some imprisonment play. Are we even allowed to say that? Since when does imprisonment come with this kind of treatment? The villainess has soft sheepskin padding under her shackles, an imported mattress, silk sheets, and such a lavish dinner. Is she being imprisoned or being pampered? Real talk, I'm actually drooling here. Steak, foie gras, pasta, cake, fruit. Can I have just one bite? Just one single bite. Seeing the comments, I immediately looked down at my wrist. Sure enough, no wonder I hadn't felt any discomfort despite wearing the shackles for so long. But what on earth was James thinking? If he wanted to vent the heroine's anger by imprisoning me, why give me this kind of VIP treatment? My head almost itched, like a brain cell was about to grow. Forget it. I'd turn my grief and anger into appetite. I picked up the cutlery, speared a piece of steak, and chewed. Full and satisfied, later that night, just as I was about to fall asleep, the basement door opened without a sound. I heard the faint tread of footsteps. The mattress dipped beside me. A solid chest pressed against my back. James wrapped his arms around me, enclosing me completely in his embrace. His hot breath brushed against the side of my neck. My heart pounded wildly. I know you're not asleep. His low voice rumbled right by my ear. My whole body trembled and I snapped my eyes open. What do you want from me, James? He didn't reply for a long moment, so I tried for a more diplomatic approach. Can you let me go? I promise I'll never go after Shiva again. He sounded faintly annoyed. What does she have to do with anything? I froze. Don't you like Shiva? James suddenly laughed, his fingertips tracing across my cheek. Sharon, are you really this stupid, or just pretending? I barely know Shiva. We've hardly even spoken a few times. Why would I like her? Wasn't he supposed to be the devoted second male lead? It wasn't just me, the live comments were in chaos too. What the hell? No way. The second male lead doesn't like the heroine? Is this allowed? Is this canon? Author, get out here and explain yourself. I was dazed for a second, then came back to my senses and asked, then why are you imprisoning me? We never had any feelings to begin with. Wouldn't a divorce be better for both of us? Divorce you so you can go to Paul? James said something so baffling I didn't know how to react. I don't get it. What? Still going to pretend? You want a divorce because of Paul, don't you? I froze, suddenly remembering what the live comments had said, that I wanted to steal Shiva's husband. Had James misunderstood everything too? It was ridiculous. First of all, ever since I was taken back by the Brown family, I'd only seen Paul a handful of times. We didn't even have each other's contact info. Where was this so-called love supposed to come from? I hurried to deny it. It's not because of him. I don't like Paul. The live comments went wild. Oh my god, I think I've just stumbled onto something huge. Don't tell me the second male lead actually likes the villainess. Laughable. Seriously, upstairs, stop clowning. How could the second male lead like the villainess? He only ever loves the heroine, okay? I'm done with you people. Why can't the second male lead like the villainess? Did none of you actually read the story? He and the villainess weren't just classmates, they even shared a desk for a while. And the heroine was always more attached to Paul from childhood. She practically never paid attention to the second male lead. Him liking her would be the weird part, liking the villainess is way more reasonable. Exactly. Didn't you notice how soft his gaze always is when he looks at the villainess? Drag the progress bar back and you can even see him sneaking glances at her during the family banquet. Finally, someone is noticing the details. Those of you insisting the villainess likes the male lead are killing me. She's obviously been secretly in love with the second male lead since high school. He chased off her greedy adoptive parents, took her for beef noodles on his bike, and there was even that time when she fell asleep and he held her face up with his hand so she wouldn't slump over. Tell me that's not the cutest thing ever. He's basically her white moonlight. So you're saying the villainess and the second male lead are actually a mutual crush couple? Where did this cursed ship even come from, and who gave you the courage to stand it? James is clearly written as the second male lead who secretly loves the heroine and can't have her. If the villainess doesn't like the male lead, then why does she keep targeting the heroine? The comment section devolved into chaos. When he heard what I'd said, I could feel the man behind me go rigid. This time it was James's turn to be stunned. He had always assumed that I went after Shiva because I liked Paul and hated her for stealing the engagement that was supposed to be mine. But that wasn't the truth at all. I had been secretly in love with James for years. If I could, I genuinely wanted to live a good, ordinary life with him. I rolled over so I was face to face with James. I decided to lay everything out clearly. Maybe that way, I could change the ending waiting for me. I like you, James. My sudden confession made him freeze, his pupils widened ever so slightly in disbelief. After a moment, as if snapping back to himself, he lowered his gaze. You're lying to me. I looped my arms around his neck, my tone earnest. I'm not lying to you, James. I really do like you. Why won't you believe me? I've liked you since high school. James stared straight into my eyes, his voice small and tentative. Really? Really? Silence gradually settled over us. He didn't say anything for a long time. Maybe he was turning my words over and over in his mind, trying to decide if they were true. Suddenly, I asked, what about you? Do you like me? James finally reacted. He wrapped his arms around me with surprising force, pulling me tight against him. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his soft hair tickling my cheek. It's not like. It's love. I love you, Sharon. I could feel my heartbeat quickening of its own accord. The corners of my lips curled up in a smile. But I hadn't had time to be happy for long before I heard his voice again. I really like what you just said. It makes me very happy. But I'm still not going to let you go. My smile froze. I wriggled out of his arms. You still don't believe me? No. In the dim light, I thought I caught a hint of helplessness in his eyes. My heart gave a sudden tremor. I surged forward and pressed a quick kiss to his lips, brushing them and pulling back almost immediately. I'll prove it to you. With that, I leaned in and kissed him again. James stared at me blankly, eyes wide. It was a long moment before he finally, cautiously responded, clumsily poking his tongue forward. I lost control of my impulses and pushed his shirt up. What a neat little row of squares, were those abs? Not sure. I gave them a feel. Higher up, soft and springy. Was that his chest? Not sure. I felt around again. And what was this big little bump? Not sure, Breathing hard, James grabbed my hand and yanked it out from under his clothes. Our hazy gazes locked. He suddenly flipped off the bed as if trying to escape. I pounced and looped the chain around his neck. Why are you running? James's breathing was uneven. You don't have to force yourself. I bit gently at his earlobe. I'm not forcing myself at all. I'm doing this because I want to. I'm very happy. The live comments exploded. Am I really allowed to be seeing this? The villainess just went on the offensive like that? This is so satisfying. The scenes we never got with the main couple are actually happening with the villainess and the second male lead. Girl, go. Don't you dare let that man get away. I'm so annoyed. The second male lead clearly belongs to the heroine. Why are they giving the villainess more screen time? I do not want to see this. Then shut up upstairs. If you don't like it, don't watch. Stop trying to farm attention. I pushed James back down and swung one leg over, straddling his waist. His gaze grew more and more unfocused, his eyes going hazy. Everything started spiraling in a direction I could no longer control. The next day. The comments, why is it morning the moment I open my eyes? Why did the screen go black last night? I thought my phone broke, I refreshed twice and nothing changed. Why does it always go dark at the key moment? Is there something our esteemed premium subscribers aren't allowed to see? Last night, to avoid any restraints, James had directly unlocked the chain on my wrist. We had left the basement an absolute mess. Which was why, when I woke up, I was in the upstairs bedroom. James had already gone to work. When I opened my phone, the screen was full of messages from him. I casually replied with just 2 words, just woke. He replied in seconds. It was like we had slipped straight into a honeymoon phase. James became incredibly clingy. He'd barely be out the door for 2 minutes in the morning before he started messaging me. At night he stopped working overtime, coming home on the dot, and the first thing he did when he walked through the door was demand a kiss. Our relationship heated up rapidly. From the coffee table in the living room, to the sofa, the kitchen, the stairs, the bedroom, and the balcony, we left traces of our passion everywhere. Until recently, when he received an invitation to a gala. He begged me to go with him. When I agreed, he was so happy he personally picked out a gown for me and arranged my hair and makeup. On the day we set out for the venue, the long-absent comments returned at last. Here we go, finally the important plot. I remember at this gala everyone fawns over the heroine, the villainess goes crazy with jealousy and dumps red wine all over her. It's a huge scene, super ugly. The male lead pressures the villainess's parents, they threaten to sever ties with her, and the second male lead gives her the cold shoulder over it too. These past few days I haven't dared to watch the second male lead and villainess scenes. They just don't feel real. Don't tell me the villainess is trying to run a universal heartthrob route, luring the second male lead in on purpose, which is why she confessed to him. I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. But I didn't expect it to show up so quickly. The moment we stepped out of the car, I saw Shiva getting out of the car behind us. She waved cheerfully at me in greeting. I ignored her. At my side, James glanced at Paul, then shifted his gaze back to me. Sensing his eyes on me, I proactively slipped my arm through his and flashed him a bright smile. Let's go. The truth was, James was a very insecure person. His parents favored Paul. With Paul in front of him, it was as if anything James did would always seem less impressive. That was why he couldn't believe me at first when I said I liked him. He simply didn't believe anyone could truly love him. James's smile lifted, satisfied. It was my first time accompanying him to an event like this. With me on his arm, he went around introducing me to everyone. This is my wife. Naturally, we also caught glimpses of my parents and Shiva, looking every inch the loving family. But James was tactful enough not to drag me over to greet them. Little by little, I let my guard down. As long as I didn't take the initiative, the plot the comments talked about didn't have to happen. Halfway through the gala, my feet were aching from my high heels. James said he would take me home. The drive back would take an hour, so I went to the restroom first. When I came out, I saw Shiva waiting right outside the door. It was like she'd been standing there on purpose, just to intercept me. I didn't want to talk to her. I tried to walk around, but she blocked my path. I'm sorry, Sharon. This is all my fault. Please don't be angry, okay? Just the sight of her aggrieved expression irritated me, and I couldn't help snapping, if you're really that sorry, then hand over all of the dowry and divorce Paul while you're at it. Shiva's eyes flew wide, tears instantly welling up. All of that was prepared for me early on by our parents. They only did it because they felt sorry for me. I cut her off. Sorry for you? What exactly are you so pitiful about? If you're pitiful, then what does that make me? I smoothly pulled off my long gloves, revealing the scars on my arm. When I was little, whenever there was meat on the table, it was never my turn to eat it. One New Year, I helped stew a chicken for the family. I was so hungry, so greedy, that I couldn't stop myself from sneaking a piece. Shiva's younger brother saw me and told her mother, and I was beaten viciously for it. This scar has stayed with me ever since. And it's not just here. There are all kinds of scars, large and small, all over my body, all of them given to me by them. That's why my least favorite season is summer. I don't even dare to wear short skirts. When the live comments saw my scars, even they couldn't help feeling sorry for me and started speaking up on my behalf. To be honest, I really don't think the villainess did anything wrong. All that dowry was originally prepared by the Brown family for their real daughter. If the heroine's mother hadn't been greedy for wealth and secretly swapped the babies, the villainess wouldn't have had to suffer like this. And the heroine clearly knows what the villainess went through, yet still insists on taking her things. That really is shameless. Taking? That's what her parents were willing to give her. It belongs to the heroine. I won't deny the villainess's parents have their own problems, but the heroine's at fault too. She never suffered a day in her life, yet acts so wronged all the time. Even if her parents gave it to her, did she have to accept it? You're not actually pitiful. You just don't want to give up your identity and live like an ordinary person. Tearfully, Shiva said, I'll talk to Mom and Dad about it. That's for the best. I let out a cold laugh and turned to leave. I hadn't expected her to suddenly run after me. She didn't catch up and ended up falling instead. I had barely turned my head when Paul's angry shout exploded behind me, Sharon Brown. What do you think you're doing? Why are you bullying Shiva again? He strode over and helped Shiva up from the ground. At the same time, my parents hurried over after hearing the commotion. My mother glared at me, furious. Didn't you promise me you wouldn't bully Shiva anymore? Supported by Paul, Shiva stood up. Mom, Dad, don't blame my sister. She didn't mean it. Does no one think that sounds fake as hell? I mean, seriously, the heroine just lost her balance and fell on her own. What does that have to do with the villainess? If I were the villainess, someone who's longed for her parents' love since childhood and waited all her life to be taken back by her real family, and then the heroine, knowing the truth, still clung to them and took her parents, I'd be even crazier than she is. I skimmed at first. When I saw the villainess bullying the heroine, I thought she was awful. After all, it was the heroine's parents who swapped the babies. The heroine is innocent too. But now? She doesn't look innocent at all when she gets bullied. If you haven't suffered what someone else has, don't preach kindness at them. Hearing Shiva's saccharine little lines, a nameless fire surged up from deep in my chest. I had a fierce urge to slap her, hard. To grab her by the hair and slap her until she questioned her entire life. Just thinking it made my hand itch to rise. But it was suddenly caught by James, who appeared out of nowhere. My eyes cleared in an instant. Only then did I realize what I had just been about to do. My mother pointed at me, her finger shaking with rage. You're completely out of line, how could you even think of hitting Shiva? My heart trembled and I couldn't help glancing at James's expression. Was he going to misunderstand me too? He didn't. His gaze was gentle as he held my hand tightly. His dark eyes slowly swept over the four people opposite us. There's a camera in the corner. It won't be hard to see what really happened. Finally, his gaze landed on Shiva, his voice turning icy. Tell me, Miss Brown, did my wife really push you? Shiva's face went pale. No, she whispered. If not, then why didn't you just say so directly? Why use such misleading words instead? And when Mrs. Brown and my brother were condemning Sharon, why didn't you speak up to correct them? With her head bowed, Shiva stammered, unable to string a full sentence together. My parents' faces turned awkward, and even Paul's expression darkened for once. Happy and relieved, I left with James. And just then, a strange electronic voice rang in my mind. Ding. Main storyline deviation detected. System repair in progress, 99%. The live comments in front of my eyes vanished without a trace. I stopped short. My fingers curled in on themselves. What was that supposed to mean? Was I still going to be controlled by the plot? Was I truly destined to be nothing more than the vicious supporting character who pushes the story forward? James looked at me in confusion. What's wrong? I shook my head. It's nothing. After we got home, I was on edge the entire time. I stayed anxious for several days. Seeing my bad mood, James deliberately took me out for 2 days to relax. He squeezed my hand and comforted me. You still have me. I forced a smile and nodded. Forget it. Since I'm here, I might as well live with it. Once I adjusted my mindset, my life gradually slipped back on track. I'd always wanted to open a pottery studio. Just then, a friend I knew recommended a shop in a pretty good location. I went to check it out in person. It looked promising, so I decisively signed the contract. Then I started looking for renovation workers. At the same time, another matter popped into my head. James's birthday was in a few days. I needed to prepare properly. So I booked a class and used my free time to learn how to make a cake. The night before James's birthday, just after I'd finished dinner, his mother, Mrs. Curry, unexpectedly gave me a call. She said she wanted us to come home tomorrow so we could celebrate James's birthday together. In my impression, Mrs. Curry had never made such a big deal out of James's birthday. I turned to ask James what he thought. What do you want to do? James hesitated, then asked, do you want to go? I honestly shook my head. Not really. I'm afraid something bad will happen if we run into Shiva again. James patted my head. Then we won't go. I beamed and promised him, don't worry. Tomorrow I'll make sure you have a birthday you'll never forget. James smiled. I'm really looking forward to it. Can I make an early birthday wish? I nodded eagerly. Of course. He lowered his voice and murmured in my ear, if you're willing to wear the little bunny outfit that day, I'll be even happier. My face flushed red and I shot him a glare. The next day, James went to work. I immediately went out to buy ingredients and came home to bake the cake. After working on it all afternoon, I looked at the finished cake and nodded in satisfaction. I was just about to box it up and put it in the fridge when James called. He sounded excited as he told me his aunt had arrived. His Aunt Rose had always treated James very well, she was the elder he respected most. When Paul won first prize at a piano competition as a child, their parents rewarded him with an overseas trip. They left 5-year-old James in his aunt's care for a while. Later on, his aunt married abroad, and they saw each other less and less. The last time they met was at our wedding. I respected James's decision. Thinking it over, I still felt uneasy. So I ordered a cake for delivery and called the Curry family home, asking them to sign for it. After work, James came to pick me up. Maybe he could sense my anxiety and nervousness. He took my hand and kissed my forehead. Don't worry. I'm here. I smiled and nodded. When we arrived at the Curry family house, James went in first and looked around, but saw no sign of his aunt. So he took the initiative to ask. That immediately annoyed Mrs. Curry. So in your eyes you only have your aunt? You don't have a mother like me anymore? You're a grown man now, and still not half as considerate as your brother and sister-in-law. James stayed silent. He had probably realized he'd been tricked. But since we were already there, it would have felt rude to turn around and leave, so we stayed for dinner. At the dinner table, Mrs. Curry seized the chance to scold James again. Look how thoughtful your brother and sister-in-law are. Just for your birthday, they asked Aunt Rose to prepare this whole feast for you. I really couldn't stand it anymore. Mom, listen to yourself. Auntie bought these ingredients, Auntie cooked them. What does any of that have to do with my brother and sister-in-law? You keep saying this is all for James, then didn't you know he's allergic to seafood? If you ask me, someone else here clearly likes this menu more than he does. Whose birthday is this really supposed to be? Mrs. Curry stared at the table full of seafood, looking a bit embarrassed, but still tried to keep her tone hard. What kind of attitude is that? James, aren't you going to say something to your wife? Is that any way to talk to your mother? James said, she's only saying what I wanted to say. Mrs. Curry's expression crumpled. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. She turned and told the kitchen to add 2 more dishes. I didn't sit idle either. I opened the box of cake I'd bought. When I lifted the lid, I froze. The perfect white swan cake was missing a big, obvious piece. A rush of anger shot straight up in my chest. Why is there a chunk missing from this cake? The housekeeper looked like she wanted to speak but didn't dare to, darting a glance at Shiva from the corner of her eye. I understood instantly. Right after that, I heard Mrs. Curry say with a frown of distaste, "Why are you making such a fuss?" Shiva was hungry, so I told her she could have a slice. I was thoroughly annoyed. This is the cake I bought for James. How could you just decide that on your own? Mrs. Curry didn't care at all. It's just a piece of cake. He's not 3 years old. Does he really need cake for his birthday? My voice dropped, turning cold. No matter how old you are, everyone has the right to be respected. Shiva immediately jumped in to play the innocent. I'm sorry, Sharon. I didn't know you bought it for James. I thought. I cut her off icily. Are you brain dead? You really don't know whose birthday it is today? Who else would someone buy a cake for? Shiva bit her lip, looking like she was going to burst into tears again. Paul stepped in to shield her, pulling out his phone. It's just a cake. So she ate some, big deal. I'll buy him another one. I rolled my eyes and tugged on James's hand. No need. This meal isn't worth finishing. Back in the car, James slumped onto my shoulder with a kind of aggrieved sweetness. Sharon, you're so good to me. I patted his head. Don't worry. I promise I'll give you a birthday that puts that one to shame. I knew those people didn't have good intentions. Fortunately, I'd prepared in advance. When we got home, I told James not to turn on the lights. I ran into the kitchen and took out the cake I'd made earlier. I stuck candles in it and carried it out to him. Happy birthday, James. Make a wish. On the small, delicate cake was a chibi cartoon version of James. Starlight seemed to sparkle in his eyes. Thank you, Sharon. Hurry, blow out the candles and make a wish. Okay. Through the candlelight, his gaze on me was deep and tender. I wish I can always be with Sharon, happy and content. When he finished, he shifted to the side and blew out the candles from a different angle. Before we left the house earlier, I'd already roasted some chicken wings. Now they just needed a quick reheat. Then, using the ingredients I'd prepped ahead of time, I made 2 plates of spaghetti with meat sauce. Our simple dinner was ready. After we ate, we curled up together on the sofa and watched one of our favorite movies. When it ended, James leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Did you forget something?" "What?" "My birthday present." I pretended not to get it. "Didn't I make you a cake?" "You know that's not what I mean." His gaze burned into mine. I couldn't win against him. With a helpless sigh, I gave in. All right. Wait here a minute. I'll go change." James followed me upstairs. At the door of the walk-in closet, I turned and warned him, "You're not allowed to follow me in." James obediently stopped, smiling as he answered, "Okay." I took out the bunny costume I'd hidden at the bottom of the wardrobe. I heard the phone ringing in the bedroom. James picked it up. I thought I heard a familiar voice, but it faded almost immediately. I hurried to change, then stood in front of the full-length mirror and secretly admired myself for a moment. Then I patted my burning cheeks and walked out of the closet, only to find the bedroom empty. "James? Where are you?" I looked around in confusion. I checked the balcony and the bathroom, but he was nowhere to be seen. Frowning, I hurried out of the bedroom and finally spotted him downstairs. He was walking toward the front door. "James!" I shouted. He kept walking as if he hadn't heard me at all. A faint dread crept up on me. I hurried after him, grabbed his arm and asked, "Where are you going?" His eyes were empty, like a puppet walking on strings. I stumbled back a few steps, my heart pounding wildly. In an instant, that electronic voice in my head flashed through my mind. Expressionless, James glanced at me and opened the front door. I snapped out of it, rushed outside and blocked his way. "Hey, James! Wake up! It's me, Sharon." James shoved me aside without mercy. "Move." Were James and I doomed to be controlled by the plot, nothing more than tools to push the story forward? I refused to accept that. I ran after him again, grabbed his arm and slapped him hard, roaring, "Snap out of it." The darkness in James's eyes slowly warmed. He suddenly reached out, pulled me tightly into his arms, his body trembling. "I'm sorry, Sharon. I'm sorry. I don't even know why this is happening. Just now Shiva called me. She said she'd fought with my brother and he'd left her on the side of the road, told me to pick her up. I refused, and then it was like someone took over my body and forced me to do something I didn't want to do." My heart sank. I was even more certain it was the plot at work. "Do you believe me if I tell you this? Our world is actually a novel. Shiva is the heroine, Paul is the male lead, I'm the vicious supporting character, and you're the devoted second male lead, her childhood friend who secretly loves her." I told him everything I knew. After he heard it, James's face slowly drained of color. "Then how were we supposed to end?" I was silent for a long time. In the end, I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth and changed the subject instead. "It's late. Let's get some rest." I went back to the bedroom and wearily took off the costume. After a shower, I lay quietly on the bed. But I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. My chest felt heavy, as if a boulder were pressing down on it. I turned my back and watched the moonlight spilling in through the window. Suddenly James wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Stop overthinking. I'm fine, aren't I? It's already over. As long as we truly love each other, we're bound to have a happy ending." I answered softly, "Mm." After that day, James threw himself into a company project, leaving early and coming home late. One time when he came home, I caught the scent of perfume on the suit jacket he'd just taken off. It was very familiar. I was just about to lean in and confirm it, when James strode over, snatched the jacket from my hands and tossed it into the trash. "That suit's dirty. Just throw it away." Tens of thousands for a suit, and he tossed it without a second thought. Even if he hadn't said anything, I already knew. It was Shiva's perfume. They'd been working together on a new project lately. I was uneasy, but I couldn't very well forbid it. Until one night. James still hadn't come home, even though it was late. I called him. Shiva's voice came through the receiver instead. "Hello, Sharon?" "James, Hands off my phone." Before she could finish, James's angry shout cut in. It sounded like he wrestled the phone back. After a burst of static, his hoarse voice came through, clear at last. "Hey, babe." It was the first time he'd ever called me that. James was drunk. He sent me a location and asked me to pick him up. I drove over to the restaurant. Just as their group was coming out. The moment he saw me, James stumbled down the stairs and flung himself into my arms. He nuzzled into my neck, mumbling, "Babe." The executives with him all laughed and teased. Who would have thought Mr. Curry and his wife were this loving? Seriously, Mrs. Curry is so young and beautiful. I gave them a polite smile and helped James into the car. When we got home, I settled James on the sofa to rest. Then I went to the kitchen to cook some hangover soup. James lay on the sofa with his eyes closed. I patted his cheek to rouse him. "Get up and drink your soup." James suddenly shot upright and shoved me hard. "Don't touch me." I cried out in shock. The glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. James sobered up at once, panic flashing across his face. I'm sorry, babe, I didn't mean it. I drank too much. I thought I was still at the restaurant and mistook you for someone else. His face was full of guilt. I forced myself to stay calm and soothed him. It's okay. There's more in the kitchen. I'll get you another bowl. Okay. James obediently followed me into the kitchen. He quietly finished the soup, then went back to the living room to clean up the broken glass before heading upstairs to shower. I lay on the bed alone, eyes shut but sleep nowhere in sight. The sound of running water in the bathroom went on for a while, then stopped. A long time passed, but James still didn't come out. I started to feel uneasy, got out of bed and knocked on the bathroom door. No one answered. Fighting down my panic, I pushed the door open. James was slumped against the cold bathtub, eyes closed. From his hanging wrist, a streak of bright red trickled down. My pupils contracted sharply. I grabbed my phone and called emergency services at once. The next day, James woke up in the hospital bed. When he opened his eyes and saw me, the corners of his mouth curved in a smile. In a soft voice he asked, "Are you an angel?" Tears burst from my eyes. James panicked. He tried to raise his hand to wipe my tears, but when he saw the bandages wrapped around his wrist, his movement stalled. Then he slowly lowered that arm and lifted the other one, the uninjured one, to gently wipe the tears from the corners of my eyes. "I'm sorry I made you sad." I asked him, "Why did you do this?" James was silent for a while before he forced the words out. "I keep feeling like I'm going to hurt you. Like I'll end up doing something terrible to you." At that, my tears flowed even harder. He floundered, completely at a loss, repeating over and over, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Sharon, please don't cry." I choked out, "Did you ever think about what it would be like to leave me behind alone? Didn't you say we'd face everything together? That as long as we're together, there's nothing we can't solve." James's face went pale. He pushed himself upright and pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. "I'm sorry. I won't do it again." I cried in his arms for a long, long time. After he was discharged, James told me what he'd been going through lately. Whenever he ran into Shiva, he felt an inexplicable pull toward her. He would be forced to do strange things. Then, in the next second, he would snap back to himself. In the end, he made a decision. "I'm going to drop this project." When I signed the contract, I didn't know she was involved. "Even if I have to pay a hefty penalty, I'm still quitting." I asked, "What if your company goes bankrupt?" He looked at me and said, "Then I'll let it go. If it really comes to that, I'll just go work at your pottery studio as a little odd job guy and let you support me. I just want to live a safe, quiet life with you." In the end, James's project wasn't cancelled, just put on hold, and he used the chance to take a leave and recuperate at home. Until one night. He got another call from Shiva. "James, sob, your brother went to see that woman again. I feel so awful, I really regret everything. Can you come have a drink with me?" Right in front of me, James hung up and blocked her number. He lay down on the bed, anxiety written all over him. I reached out and smoothed the creases between his brows. "Sleep. It'll be all right." James held me tightly in his arms. Without realizing it, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up the next day and opened my eyes, I found James lying beside me, watching me. His eyes were bloodshot. I stared at him, stunned. "You didn't sleep at all?" "No. I was scared." He was afraid the plot would take him over again. But obviously, it hadn't. I felt that something had changed, but couldn't quite put it into words. Suddenly, that familiar electronic voice rang in my head again. Ding. Severe storyline deviation detected. A brand new script has been automatically generated. Progress, 1%. Thrilled, I grabbed James and said, "It's over. We're safe." He didn't really understand, but seeing how happy I was, he smiled too. "Yeah, we're fine." I gently stroked his hair. "Go to sleep. When you wake up, it'll be a brand new beginning." Extra. After that, James and I were never controlled by the plot again. We lived out our days in happiness. Shiva, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. In domineering CEO stories, every male lead comes with a classic white moonlight. Paul was no exception. When his white moonlight returned to the country, Shiva started fighting with Paul over her all the time. It escalated to the point of divorce. At the same time, the Brown family discovered that Shiva had secretly siphoned company funds to pay off her biological father's debts. Her family had been like a bottomless pit all these years, constantly draining her dry. Her family was very poor. Her father had been a gambler from early on, racking up debts, and only behaved for a while after they were paid off. Now that he knew his daughter had money, he fell back into his old ways. Shiva had an older sister who'd married a lazy freeloader and had 2 children, a family desperately short on money. Shiva's younger sister had also reached marriageable age. Their mother was counting on Shiva to find her sister a good match, preferably some second-generation rich kid in their circle. Shiva's brother hadn't gotten into college and couldn't find a job, so they wanted Shiva to pull strings to get him into the Brown family company. If Shiva refused, they threatened to make a scene as an entire family. The Curry family was also a prominent household. If Mrs. Curry found out, it would tarnish the family's reputation, and she would definitely be displeased. And some of the socialites who didn't get along with her were just waiting to laugh at their disgrace. The Curry family grew utterly disgusted with Shiva's parents. Shiva was terrified they really would cause a scene and ruin her reputation in a scandal. Afraid she would lose everything. Her antics gave the Brown family a serious sense of crisis. Worried the company would eventually fall into outsiders' hands and be stripped of their name, they decisively kicked Shiva out. Then they came groveling to me for reconciliation. I didn't know the first thing about running a company, so they threw their full support behind James instead. With the Brown family on board, James's company grew bigger and bigger. The Curry family's business, by contrast, went downhill in Paul's hands, his mind filled day and night with nothing but his white moonlight. Mr. and Mrs. Curry became terrified their empire would collapse in their elder son's hands and slowly started eyeing James as their salvation. Every holiday, when I opened the villa door, I'd see 4 elders standing on the doorstep, staring awkwardly at each other. But James and I weren't interested in entertaining them. We simply closed the door and went on living our own little life.